One of the things that I love about GBT is the conversations that we get to have, whether that's through class discussions or getting to know my classmates better. There's always a unique depth to our dialogue. We get to deliberate the hard questions that we find in our readings, and I love how Mr. Hendricks never gives us the correct textbook answer. Instead, we're all engaging in a discussion to deduce the most logical Christian position to take on a particular issue. Mr. Hendricks is really our tour guide, not our teacher, and is leading us on a journey filled with literary and spiritual beauty. Our destination is truth, and by becoming better philosophers, we're really becoming better lovers of Christ.
I graduated from the Great Books tutorial in the year 2000. I was a member of the very first graduating class. I went on to study at the University of Texas at Austin and at Yale Law School. And to this day, I still regard the Great Books tutorial as the most intellectually formative experience of my life, and Mr. Hendricks as the most gifted and rigorous teacher that I've ever had the privilege to study under. And that's because it was through the Great Books tutorial that I was introduced to the great conversation for the first time. And I was invited not simply to observe that conversation about ideas as though it were purely historical fact, but instead to participate in it, to ask the same questions the ancients were asking, to reason together with the great philosophers of history in pursuit of truth. So the Great Books program was tremendous preparation for my experience in higher education. It prepared me not only academically, but it also equipped me to understand and respond to a whole spectrum of ideological challenges. My experience in both college and law school was that every premise of my intellectual and theological framework was subject to challenge and sometimes attack. And I was ready for that, not because I had all of the answers, but because I had the benefit of a historical framework to evaluate particular arguments. So I think there's tremendous freedom that comes with knowing that because we have the mind of Christ, we have nothing to fear from hard questions.
What GBT did for our kids was it taught them how to think critically, whereas in the school system, the kids are taught something and they are basically given the answer to the question and then to repeat that answer during a test. Whereas GBT, it's never like that. The question is asked, the answer is never given, because the answer is the child has to come up with an answer, and that makes sense to him and to the instructor based on what they were talking about. But the answer is never given. The answer is asked little by little and prodded with different angles so that the student can understand what they should really be thinking.
The real gift that Socrates gave philosophy was the process of asking questions about our experience in life, hard questions, coming up with an answer, and then asking questions about the answer. Why do you believe this? Oh, really? Okay, why do you believe that? And seeing him apply this process of inquiry to the men of Athens, and how frustrating it was to the people that were being interviewed, because they realized that they thought they had beliefs and opinions and they were really strongly held, but the foundations of those beliefs were really weak. And Socrates sort of encouraging them to have more rigorous answers, and the power of questions was really big. I was 12 at the time, and I'd never really been asked deep questions, and so I felt for the first time I was sort of waking up to reality and saying, okay, why am I here? Why do I believe this? Why do they believe that? Why is this the way it is? And that stuck with me.
I think that ETS is uniquely suited in its formation towards forming the mind and understanding of a student in high school. And so the first 1 to 2 years that are more lecture-based, and then moving into a more conversationally formatted classroom first prepares the student in this context of great ideas and understanding, and the lectures help give a context for what you're doing with each text. And then Mr. Hendricks asks really excellent questions that spur you on to harder thoughts about the text. And then in year 3, when we transition into a more explicitly conversational format, we stop raising hands. It's just a very organic conversation. you have the chance to grapple with the ideas rather than write down answers on a test. Because honestly, a test format of saying, what does Augustine say in his Confessions isn't going to be the same thing as having a conversation about what he's trying to say, and it gives you a deeper understanding.
I like Great Books because in the conventional high school approach, the focus is on what to think, not how to think. In GBT, the emphasis is on developing a skill set of analyzing the people and places around you and coming to a reasoned conclusion as to how they impact the world, how they have impacted the world, and how they impact the decisions that you will make in your life.
Something that was difficult for me, which I didn't even realize was happening, was trying to understand the world the way that God would have me understand it and how He would have me see it and love it in the way that I should. And that was difficult when I had these assumptions that I'd kind of imbibed, not consciously, but that evolution, that everything is a struggle, and you see competition and struggle, and there's a lot of darkness and pain, and GBT really gave me a way to verbalize those feelings that I had about that I didn't understand, and I was able to look at them and ask questions about them, and GBT gave me a different way of looking at the world than so many people that I saw around me, extended family or friends or people that I had met, how they would look at the world and say, this is the way the world is and this is what's important. And then I go to GBT and I would read about Plato and how he talks about beauty and love and how it should draw you upwards, and beautiful truths and old things that were uncomfortable at first, but then when you started to understand, you realized how much wisdom was behind them and how much they understood and how much they perceived about the world. And it was completely different from what I'd expected or thought was possible. And it gave me freedom to think differently about the world, differently from other people. I don't have to feel, well, they think about the world this way, I should think that way too. I don't have to feel that restriction anymore. I can say, well, Augustine thought this, and he said it's very different from that, and maybe you say that's the way it is now, but it may not be the case.